One tackle. That was the difference between West Coast chalking up a first big W of the season. It wasn't a weekend for those with a dodgy ticker. If you've been locked away in a biosphere all weekend and haven't had any reception, here's the lowdown. The 9 games provided the lowest average losing margin in the VFL-AFL since round 10, 1970, when there were only 6 games played. Eagles fans will have to remain patient for a little longer, hopefully not a lot longer, with St Kilda awaiting on Sunday at Optus Stadium. There were more green shoots than a nursery in autumn. Gross came into the game late and showed the sort of adventurous spirit the Eagles need. Harley Reid unleashed his best game of the year. Liam Ryan looked at home in a new full-time midfield role. Fremantle faced a vulnerable Collingwood off a 5-day break on the road and without 4 premiership guns. And they still couldn't get the job done. Well, they got it half done, winning all the metrics that count except the one that matters most, on the scoreboard. Now the focus is back on whether the Sean Darcy, Luke Jackson ruck partnership can work. A clash with a back-in-form GWS in Western Sydney awaits the Dockers as they enter a defining moment of their season and perhaps in the AFL coaching career of Justin Longmuir. Welcome to the West Sports Show. We are brought to you by TabTouch. Got the touch? Download the TabTouch app today. What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. I am joined, as always on a Tuesday, by the West Australians, Craig O'Donoghue. G'day, Crod.
How are you, Quarters?
I should say g'day, Cod.
Did you call me God? That's my son's name's George, so he's a God. My dad's name's Jared, so he's a God as well, actually. So there's lots of gods in the family.
They all think we're God, mate, till they become teenagers and then they change. But they're all, we love them all, don't we? You're fresh from Fremantle training. All the talk since Thursday night's 14-point loss to Collingwood has been about the ruck combination of Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson. What came out of that today?
So Sean Darcy did not train. That was the main thing that came today. So he had the jarred knee against Collingwood the other night, which resulted in him not finishing the game. And he will be given until Thursday to decide whether or not he's right to play. Now, this isn't a setback similar to the injuries that he's had in the past. This is a contact injury. But you'd have to think that if you've had all of those problems over the preseason and then you have a different sort of knee injury now, that you'd be reticent to take the risk of taking him over to GWS in case something goes wrong. He spent 6 months getting himself right. I just can't see them playing him because you want him to be right for the second half of the year. If you play him now and something goes wrong, then you're thinking, why did we do that for? So I'd be surprised if they go in with both Darcy and Jackson this week.
What did the coach have to say about the combination itself? Because it's come under the spotlight.
Yeah, so I'll let Justin Longmuir tell the story himself. This is what Justin Longmuir had to say when asked about whether he's still confident about the Jackson-Darcy combination.
Yeah, I just love a little bit more evidence. Yeah, and love a little bit more time for them to be able to work together. And it's probably the most unfortunate thing if he does miss this week is that it's just another hiccup in their partnership and their ability to work together. Because I haven't lost any confidence in how that can work in the future.
Have you lost confidence in it?
I'm starting to. One thing I will say is there was a lot of talk over the weekend about Darcy's re-entry into the competition this season. So ideally, he probably gets a week or two in the waffle. But Luke Jackson, of course, did his hamstring. So he was forced into that team, which is probably not ideal. But nevertheless, that's just the way it was. I want to see a bit more, but I'm starting to lose a little bit of combination. Given that they're both on pretty good contracts, it's pretty rare these days to see the two ruckmen, isn't it, in the same side? I mean, most teams are now going down the ruckman with a forward ruck, and Voss has handled that role okay, I think, in the past. Other clubs do it. We saw West Coast sort of do it with Flynn and Bailey Williams. Bailey's sort of like a ruckman, but he's not. So I'm just not sure. We know Sean Darcy at his best is a Doig medalist, but I'm just not sure yet whether that combination is going to work and whether the way to go is with two rucks.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Justin Longmuir said then he'd like to see more of it. And the way I'm looking at it at the moment is if you're Justin Longmuir, what are you concentrating on? Is it how the game looks or what the numbers tell you? And the numbers are telling him that Darcy and Jackson works.
Last year, yeah.
This is the numbers over the past 2 years, including this season as well. So with just Jackson playing without Darcy, they average plus 1.3 clearances per game. When they both play, it's plus 3.5. So it's more than double. They're better off from a clearance perspective by the numbers. From a games perspective, they average more wins, 9 and 14 when there's just one. It's 15 and 13 plus a draw when they're both there. Average score, 76 points when only one of them plays, 86 points when they both play. And then you've got inside 50s where it's similar, but it's just in favour of Fremantle when both of them play. So the numbers are saying to him, this works. It was 62-34 inside 50s the other day. It was 43-30 clearances when they're both out there. So is it that it's them or is it the rest of the group that they need to fix up outside of that? Because at the moment, for Justin, he's saying, I can't ignore these figures and just go on what everyone thinks when the figures are saying something else.
I think he's not impacting as much, though, is he? Certainly not at ground level, that's for sure, and certainly not in other roles apart from at the ruck contest itself. So I almost feel like I'd like to see him have a couple of weeks in the waffle just to get that conditioning up, to get some confidence up. And right for the moment, just stick with Jackson and Voss as a secondary ruck, and let's get him building some body conditioning and a bit of a tank and some. It's pretty hard competition. You're coming up against absolute elite ruckman most weeks, aren't you?
Yeah, in fact, I wouldn't even mind him not playing at all, as in doing a mini pre-season over the next couple of weeks before the bye, and then coming back into the team afterwards. I think that could be one of the keys for him because he hasn't done a lot of running. Is it better for him to run and get fit, or is it better for him to play and bash into people the entire time in the waffle? Because it's a balance, isn't it? You can either play or you can train.
They're pretty good at conditioning you now off the field, out of an actual game.
Yeah,
situation.
but we've also got to recover and all those things. It is hard. Like he didn't do a lot of work in that preseason. As you said, he was forced to come in a bit earlier than they wanted him to because Jackson getting hurt. But it does those figures I mentioned before. It reminds me a bit of when the test documentary that they had with Steve Smith at one point after he got hit by Jofra Archer, and he said everyone was saying, "Oh, it was a great contest. Oh, and Jofra Archer hit me all the time." He goes, "He didn't get me out." He goes, I kept scoring runs. So, and I reckon this is very similar. Justin Longmuir was going, it might not look great. The energy might not be as there. It might not be as exciting when we've got the two of them there, but the numbers keep saying that it's better for the team. I reckon it's a really interesting scenario for him where he's data-driven. We're all looking at it from our eyes and going, well, the eyes tell us it's not working. He's saying the numbers are telling me that it is. And eventually, the two of them are going to either come together and work out, or we're still going to be in a case of where everyone's still arguing and they're going to have to make a big call. But yeah, the fact you talked about the amount of money they are investing in their two rucks, that's something that is not going to go away because those are long-term contracts. So they have a big decision to make. But if they tried to move Darcy on now, would he get the value that they would have got a couple of years ago? You wouldn't have thought so. If Jackson does leave, then you got the question of, well, what happens if Darcy's knee doesn't hold up? Then you're left without a clear backup ruckman. Reedy hasn't been able to prove himself yet as a genuine AFL ruckman. So they've got these two guys who they know can play. They're not sure if they can play together, and they'd be fearful if they're apart. What do you do now?
It might be a bit wiser at the end of the year with Luke Jackson. We'll see what happens there. As a proud major sponsor of the Fremantle Football Club, Woodside has accepted the challenge of supporting local footy at all levels, from grassroots to greatness, so it can thrive throughout WA. Woodside, Australia's leading energy company. Cod, you touched on it before. It's not just about the ruck contest. We obviously saw nearly 30 more inside 50s. We saw, a contested possession. We saw clearances, yet they're not getting it done. Justin Longmuir's been talking about bang for buck for a couple of years now. And we see at the other end, I think it was 22 scoring shots from about 34 inside 50s Collingwood. Just really super efficient, and they are probably the number one team for efficiency in their forward half right at the moment. But Fremantle just really struggling in that area, and this mid-forward connect, you can understand why fans are getting frustrated because this has been on the agenda for some time.
Yeah, absolutely it has, and they badly miss Hayden Young because of his ability to genuinely hit a target. I thought it was interesting today when they trained that Luke Ryan was up around the stoppages a lot more, and so they were getting the ball out with the midfielders back to him, and he would have the kick inside 50 because he's such a good kick. whereas Sarong and Brayshaw are under the pump a lot of the time when they get the ball because they're such contested beasts. So without having the player who can really make sure it's being kicked to the advantage of the forwards, it's a lot harder for those forwards. And 3 talls, with one of them being the backup ruckman, does work in football because we've seen it with Adelaide. Like Riley Thilthorpe is that backup ruckman, and then you've got Tex Walker and you've got Darcy Fogarty. They've had 5 more inside 50s than Fremantle for the season, but they've had 29 more goals. So it's a significant difference for what they've been able to achieve with their players down there. So if you have the right guys down there, it makes a big difference. They had too many talls on the weekend. Having the 2 genuine rucks and the 3 tall forwards was one too many. I don't think they can go with that ever again. So it either needs to be Darcy with Jackson as the 3rd tall forward who then goes into the ruck, or it's one of those rucks misses out and you play the other 3 with Voss coming in. I don't think you can have 2 genuine rucks and 3 tall forwards. That mix just felt wrong, and they've never done that before.
It's not all glass half empty because I thought the effort was there. Now, we want that this week against GWS on the road. That's the key for me. It's not just a one-off back at home. We want to see that every week. It's, as Peter Bell said at the weekend, it's the non-negotiable effort. It's like pulling your boots on, your left and your right boot on. That's just what you bring every week. The other stuff you can celebrate. But I did think a couple of the significant... I think Warner into the middle's been a really good move. Wagner, sorry. And I really think Shea Bolton at the weekend gave them another dimension as well. So I thought he went to work. He's a highly paid player. And they've got to make demands of him now, and I think that's a role he can play.
Yeah, he was fantastic. He had 5 clearances in the first quarter, 5 centre clearances in the first quarter, just got to work. But he's really interesting as well because you look at Jackson, comes into the team, is your forward, is your ruck, what do they want? Shea Bolton is your midfielder, is your forward. So dynamic in the middle, but they couldn't score. Yeah. So he's the one who you want to be crumbing down there and doing all that damaging work, but you also want him in the middle because of his speed and his skill and the electricity and all those sorts of things. So they've got all of these players who you go, oh, they're good here. Oh, but we need them there still. So they've got so many holes that they're trying to fill at the moment. Blokes are being moved everywhere. Wagner's a good small defender, but now he's playing as a tagger. Jackson's more important for them as a ruckman, but he needs to play forward sometimes. Bolton and the same. And yeah, it's interesting. When you go, it's only 10 games ago they played GWS in that game up there at Giant Stadium, or NG Stadium as it is. And there's going to be 9 changes this week from that team. So Banfield, Draper, Fife, O'Driscoll, who's still hurt after the game in the Waffle on the weekend, O'Meara, Reedy, Sturt, Walker and Young were all in that team 10 games ago. It just shows how much turnover there has been with this group, the instability due to injury, and they haven't been able to settle it down and get everyone playing specific roles. And so Bolton's a forward one week, a midfielder the next. Everyone else is moving around. That's their big challenge at the moment. They need to work out who is playing where and keep them there for as long as possible. Across town, a thrilling game. In fact, we should acknowledge the lowest average victory margin since round 10, 1970 at the weekend. Just a crackerjack round of football. Not good if you've got a dodgy ticker. But the Eagles game, of course, we're all watching. I know the North Brisbane game was thrilling in itself, but I felt like the Richmond West Coast game deserved to be a draw more. A great tackle from Tom Brown. Well done to him, that chase down. But I actually really like the fact that Tom Gross had the ball in his hands, came on, made an impact. By the way, fairly good contested mark from Jack Hutchinson then. Showed a lot of calm and composure there. Hoff gets the ball to Gross, and just, the youthful enthusiasm takes over, and it's just instinct to have the bounce, isn't it? If he hasn't had the bounce, he may have got a kick away. We still don't know whether he would have scored the goal or not, but I love the fact he puts himself in the position, and just from the small sample side, he seems like the sort of player that wants to be in the moment. I want him in the team a lot. Well, he needs to play. He needs to be a starting player. Yeah, he's looked good every time he's played, and the energy that he gives them is so important. You mentioned the bounce. Like, you listen to Dermot Brereton and Gary Lyon and Jonathan Brown when they're calling, and they hate people who take an early bounce. They always say, keep your head up, run your full distance, and then bounce, because you don't know what's going to happen in front of you, you don't know what's going to happen behind you. And that was the clear example, wasn't it? That if he hadn't have had the bounce, he would have got to 50 and had the shot. So that's a good reminder for everyone that listen to these commentators. They are actually correct when they say don't bounce it. Pretty hard to get everything right at that age, I reckon, and that level of inexperience, with all the peripheral noise and everything going on around you.
I actually, of course, he'll learn that in time and experience, but I just love the fact he was in that position.
Yeah, and as I said, that's why I think he's so important to this group, because he is that ball of energy and he tries different things and he's prepared to take the game on. So I'd love to see him no longer used as a sub and throw him in there and let him create a little bit of mayhem, because when they've made some changes to their midfield now.
Sure have.
And it was Jack Graham, Brady Hoff, Liam Ryan, Tyler Brockman, Harley Reid, Evan Hewitt and Tom Gross, who all had midfield time on the weekend. They were the only ones who got in there, and they've all got a bit of spunk about them, bit of speed, bit of power. That's what you want in your midfield. And so
you can throw Jack Hutchinson in there too, who's really hard at it, young player.
He wasn't in there on the weekend. He has been in the past. But if you keep putting those guys in, then you're going to get that spunk that you talk about and that speed and that spark. Whereas Tim Kelly was playing forward. Liam Baker wasn't in there, but he was doing some good things elsewhere. So there was a lot to like about the way they went about it, I thought. And you can see now that Andrew McQuarter's had the courage to try things this year, and that's the only way you get anywhere. If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got.
And he mixes it up, which I like to see. And if you look at why they lost, it's the inaccuracy. They had their opportunities, particularly in the third quarter. And Jake Waterman kicked 1-3 when you'd normally say he's going to kick 3 of those at least every time of the week. I'm not heaping the blame on him. That's just a fact. He missed goals that he should have kicked. So I really liked Harley's game. I thought it was his best game of the year. He's a little bit, he's got to find that balance. And you can see he's trying to find that balance between the aggression and the composure. And he'll get there. He'll get there. He's always going to be a player who lives on the edge, but I think you can see he's trying to get there. And when that balances out a bit more, I think we're going to see more consistent performances from him and less of the hot-headed stuff. Did you like Bailey Williams' game?
Yeah, I thought he worked well into the team and it helped Matt Flynn, whereas Flynn struggled a bit in the past. So I think that's the situation which they need to experiment with a little bit more. And I liked Williams as a genuine ruckman in previous years as well. I think that his mobility has been important for them. So that might be the way forward as well, because they are trying a lot of different things. You mentioned Reid. I thought Harley was great. I thought the way he played and took the game on and had
great goal from 55.
Yeah, the metres gained was 479 metres gained. He hadn't had over 300 for the previous 3 matches, so that was a real positive. I think that's his point of difference, isn't it? Getting the metres gained, running with the footy, taking the game on. Because what we've seen with his free kicks against, so it's 41-4 and 47 against last year, so it's almost 50-50. This year it's 11-4 and 26 against, 26 being the most in the league. He's getting caught with the ball a lot more. I think he's taking people on even more than he did last year when the fend-off helped him. Now the fend-off he's being caught with a bit more, so he's having a lot more holding the ball free kicks, and that's frustrating him. And he creates contests everywhere he goes. He makes umpires make decisions with every single time he gets the ball. Has he run too far? Is the tackle legal that's on him? Has he fended it off? Umpires are constantly having to make calls, and that results in some of them going your way, some of them going against you, and a lot of them are going against him at the moment. But I think what we saw over the weekend was that's the version of Harley that they need to encourage. Run with the footy, get into space, and then kick it as far as you can and get that side of your game rather than try to burst through and then hand pass out. Get yourself out and go for a run.
So West Coast fans, fret not just yet. There's a lot of the season to go. You'll get an opportunity against North Melbourne in Bunbury. There'll be a return match against Richmond at Optus, but there'll be other opportunities. Sunday against St Kilda, while they've been in pretty good form, presents an opportunity. And if they take the same intent, they'll give them a run for their money, and you just never know what might be at the end of it, Cod.
Yeah, I think this game is one that they can put down and say this is a winnable game for them. As you said, there's not too many where they would go in and go, this is genuinely winnable. St Kilda are up and down. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're really ordinary. So which version are you going to get this week? Harley should be motivated as all get out this week, because it was last year, obviously, against the Saints where they put the tagger onto him and he got suspended and it cost him the Rising Star Award. So he'll want to prove to them that he is the star of the future that's going to be the one who can take over this game. So I would have thought as a fan you would go to this game going, we need to supply this team with as much energy as we can, as much noise as we can, try to intimidate St Kilda and help your team to get over the line, because this is one of those few games throughout the year where you go, I reckon they're a chance if they can get into it, along with the next Richmond game they play, as you say, the North Melbourne game, and there might be one or two later on in the year, depending on how teams are going as well. But yeah, when you're in that game for as long as they were, and they had the energy that they showed in that game, and of course the game against Essendon as well, where they were in that for a long time too, you can see now that they're starting to believe a little bit more, and it's not a case of, if we give away a few goals now, we're going to lose by 10 goals. They start to think that they can fight their way through matches a bit more, which is a positive for West Coast fans.
We're not sure where Jeremy McGovern is at for this week just yet. Oscar Allen's in a similar boat. They could possibly be both ins, or they could not. Harry Edwards did a fair job, I thought, even it was a bit of he didn't really know whether he was playing till the last minute came in. Did a fair job on Tom Lynch. Liked a couple of things I saw from Sandy Brock. Nice intercept mark at one point. So, keep building on these pluses. The forward line, as we mentioned, Bailey Williams comes in. So Archer Reed's had a good year, but he'll need to have a rest at some point because it's first year for him, but first year of AFL playing games, and it's tough out there. Jack Williams will come back at some point. He went okay at the weekend in the Waffle, so it's going to be a bit of a moving feast in that forward line. But I did like a couple of those performances last weekend. If McGovern and Allen can't find their way back in this week, that'll help them.
Well, the big question, though, is McGovern will be back either this week or next week from that concussion. So you lock him in as your staple in the back line. And then they've got to decide, is Oscar Allen's knee so much of a concern that he becomes a flight risk?
This is a good knee, though. This was
a good knee. Well, that's two knees then that he's got a problem. Is his knee jeopardising their chances of getting the number 2 draft pick if they finish on the bottom of the ladder through a trade because other clubs might be concerned about him? So would you rest him at key points of this year, maybe not play him for a month, 6 weeks, the last month of the season or something like that, to make sure that Brisbane or Hawthorn have the player they want to get, you can get the draft pick at the end? Or do you think it's more important to have him in the team as a captain and playing in there every single week?
I think it's more important to have him in there as a captain playing. Not every single week. He may need a week or two rest, as he did last weekend. But I'd play him if he's available and fit. Absolutely. I think it's too important for the structure. And let's not forget, it's a new era. And while there may be some issues from him and his club and the contract, and he might be Brisbane, let's say he's going to Brisbane, but he still loves his teammates. You still want to play footy, and he's got a bit to offer out there. He's got experience. So no, I'm playing him.
Interesting. I'd play him now, but as you get towards late July,
you'd rest him later on.
I reckon there might be, we're going to just make sure we look after him and manage, or that even admit we've come to terms and we're going to allow him to explore his free agency or something like that. I don't think late July into August, if he's healthy, as in not requiring surgery healthy, and that you can take the risk of him ending up with a big injury in those latter stages of the year, because that number 2 pick is going to be far more important to them than whatever he does in the last 6 weeks of the year.
Now, before we get on to some other games, Cod, I've just come back from the funeral of one of the greats of the game, Peter Bosustow at Lathlane Park. Really lovely, moving service. His beautiful letter read out from his wife, Shelley, to Peter. His children, his son Brent and daughter Brooke, both spoke really well. It was hard up there for them, but they did a great job, and his granddaughter Mia as well. A wonderful Adrian Barrett did a great job, who actually told the story of he was tossing up whether to play for Perth or Claremont when he first came to Perth from Canberra, and he got a call from Bosustow, and he said, well, why would I want to play with you? And he said, because I'm back. There was also a lot of Carlton people there, and WA greats, Ross Ditchburn, Val Perovic, Shane O'Sullivan, a great Carlton administrator, had flown across, John Dorotich, also Mike Fitzpatrick, and Mike spoke really well. Just one of the stories he relayed, they all spoke of this great teammate, really colourful character, but also just a genuinely good person, a good father, a good husband, all of those things. Told the story one day, Carlton was playing Hawthorn at Princes Park. I think Bosustow he was coming back from an injury, and I think Robert Dippy at Domenico had been up to his old tricks and maiming a few Blues players. So he's picked the right opportunity and sort of put a hip and shoulder across Dipper's sternum, and he's actually cracked his sternum, so he's in a bad way, Dipper. And he said after the game, and that day there'd been a couple of really big horse races on in Melbourne. Anyway, after the game, they were all in the shower, and Fitzpatrick, he painted the story beautifully. He said, through the foggy mist of the shower, he said, with all this going on, he said, and Bosustow walks towards us, and he says, 3 great champions came back today, Manikato, Kingston Town, and the Buzz.
That just sums him up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sums him up.
And it was really well done. 61 rounds of chemotherapy over about a 4-year period. So actually shows you what a fighter he was too. And, merciful in the end. A really nice lap of honour after the game to around his beloved Lathlane Park. David Parkin sent a video tribute. And a couple of things they said. One of the things that was said that drove home to me about how revered he was in Carlton was that he was only there for 3 seasons, 2 premierships in that time. Mark and Goal of the Year, of course, in 1981. But they reckon if he had hung around for a decade, would be talked about in the same breath as Alex Jezelenko.
Well, that was the type of player. He was high-flying, spectacular, impact player who everyone loved to watch, drew people through the gates. An amazing career, an amazing life. And it's, when you look at the names you just mentioned who have flown over for the funeral to make sure they could pay tribute to a great man, well, that's what you hope that people will remember you for, being that sort of a bloke. And, just a wonderful tribute for a really great guy. Vale,
Peter, Bosustow, thank you for all the memories. We loved every single one of them. Now, we'll go through a few of the games, Cod. Firstly, I want to... You a bit up and about at the moment, your boys?
My
Bombers.
Bombers.
To string a few together now. And the only question I have, look, apart from the fact that Zach Reed, Nate Caddy, Archie Perkins, Peter Wright's found some form. That's not even mentioning a few of your mids. So McGrath, great game at the weekend. Merritt keeps generally getting it done. Todd Goldstein, doing a superb job, but surely this is not sustainable for a 36-year-old.
Well, no, I don't think he's in the ruck because there's nobody else left. Everyone else is hurt.
Sadly, you lost another one at the weekend too through injury.
Yeah, but the Bombers are going okay. I wouldn't say they're going great. I was at the North Melbourne game the previous week in the crowd, and there was a lot of frustration amongst the fans with the inconsistency throughout that game. So they're beating teams below them on the ladder. They snuck over the line against North. They snuck over the line against West Coast. They snuck over the line against the Swans. So these are all teams that are in the bottom 5, and they also beat Melbourne that are down there as well. So I wouldn't have thought the Bombers are flying, but they're winning games. There was one thing philosophically that I want to talk about from that game. As an Essendon supporter, I liked what was going on, but as a footy fan, I hated it. And that was late in the game, Archie Perkins takes a mark, 55 out from goal. The game is on the line still. Says, I want my 30 seconds, I'm shooting for goal. No worries. Takes 20. Kicks it to Dylan Shield, who goes, I want my 30 seconds, I'm shooting for goal. Takes his 20 seconds and kicks it back again. So the ability for players to just waste time by saying, well, I've taken a mark inside 50, I want my 30, then use the clock and then pass it to someone else. I don't think you should be allowed to do that. If you've
So you get one, saying in your forward 50, you get one 30-second count for a goal shot.
Yep, and then if you pass the ball, they've got their 7 seconds like everyone else does around the ground. You've used your 30, you haven't chosen to have a shot for goal. It should be 7 seconds, dude, then you can play on. And because I can see it's getting down to a grand final. And chipping the ball around is wasting time. That's not how we want to see a game finish. I think you want the game to be alive as much as possible, and I don't think you should be allowed to use multiple 30 seconds just because a player has been left alone.
So the big criticism of the Bombers has been their defensive ethic. Best 6 weeks in terms of points conceded under Brad Scott. Now, I know you mentioned a few teams that were beatable, but that's a good sign. And I feel like you're going to be tested. So 3 of them. So you've got the Bulldogs this week, then Richmond, and then the Lions the week after. So there'll be a couple of audits there. See how you're going.
Yeah. As I said, I think the Bombers are about where they are on the ladder. They're just outside the 8. They're not a great team. They're going to have some issues at different points of the year they're building.
Now, the side they played, Sydney, I have grave concerns for them in terms of attack. Who in the hell is going to kick their goals?
Yeah, well, Joel Hamling's down there at the moment. And
Joel Hamling, Francis, and who else is down there? Well, McLean's down there, but So, that's not a forward line that instills you with great confidence.
No, Papley's loss for them has been really significant. They've got injuries all over the field. That's the reality. Like Dean Cox must be tearing his hair out thinking of first year as a coach, and I don't have the players that were available to John Longmire last year. So
Logan McDonald, sort of a second or third forward, but not available.
Errol Goulden injury has been horrible for them this season. Callum Mills hasn't been available for them either. So he is discovering that life is much harder when you don't have good players out there. And that's like a lot of the coaches at the moment. When you take the good players out of their team, Justin Longmuir is finding it as well. Take good players out and it's so much harder to win games.
Scores inside 50, ranked number 1 last year when they made the grand final and then were smashed, ranked 18th this year. So that shows you where they're at with that.
And they were horribly ill-disciplined on the weekend with all those 50-metre penalties as well. So that's a sign of inexperience and frustration within that group.
Now, confirmed the number 1 rivalry in the competition is the showdown.
Best game in footy, isn't it?
How good was that game now? Standalone, come on. You can't have it up against the Dogs and Gold Coast on the same night. This has to be a standalone fixture. They've earned the right for that.
Yeah, and it should
every
be on,
week.
It should be on free-to-air TV as well. It needs to be Friday night footy or Thursday night footy so the whole nation can watch it because it is the best rivalry going around. Something always happens, and there's always a little bit of controversy. There was this time with the medal. There's always some drama with some big hits and I
thought Rosie was fine with them to win it. It was just no Port supporters hung around afterwards, so they were booing him.
Yeah, I still reckon that all medals should go to a player from the winning team.
Yeah,
I think it should be voted for well and truly after the siren. Sometimes they want it from the 25-minute mark of the last quarter, and it should be the best player from the winning team because the bloke who's in the losing team doesn't want the medal anyway. He's just going to chuck it away. So give it to the player from the winning team, make everyone happy, and it avoids that sort of drama. But yeah, the rivalry itself is just phenomenal. It's such a good game of footy that it needs to be on free-to-air TV.
Without Phil Thorpe and a little bit of cameo magic from Rankine, Port get the job done. So they were a bit like Fremantle, pumping it inside 50 late, just couldn't get the job done. What a great mark to Marqueen, though.
Yep.
What a fantastic bit of theatre. And the post-match was almost worth 3 votes too.
Yeah, the Irish guys are great to listen to. They speak... they speak regardless of the accent. They speak differently with a bit more freedom than what the blokes who are born over here do. So yeah, I really enjoy hearing them and their approach to the game.
Couple of others, Carlton, St Kilda. Interesting, Carlton got the job done. St Kilda closed the game down when Carlton were 3 or 4 down, and Michael Voss came out afterwards and said, "Thanks, Ross. It's exactly what we needed. Close the game down because we were a few down, so we needed to manage our numbers." So I thought that was really interesting. Hawthorn got the job done again, not playing great football, but they're 7-2. Arm wrestled to 3/4 time, then they blew Melbourne away. What'd you think of a $1.3 million tagger, Clayton Oliver and John Newcomb?
Yeah, interesting. You got to do what you got to do to get a bloke into form, though,
I
don't you?
liked it, actually. I thought it was a great move.
Yeah, so if a player is prepared to do it as well and do a good job with it, then it sends a message to the rest of the team that it works and that everyone's prepared to sacrifice and do what's required for your team. So I thought that was a good sign. What I loved was that Sam Mitchell said to these players at 3/4 time, "You're playing boring footy and you're boring me."
I love that.
You're boring me. Normally coaches are like, shut the game down, focus on defense. Entertain me, he said. And they went and kicked 6 goals, 5 in the last quarter. That's highly entertaining. So, yeah, players everywhere, go out, express yourselves, entertain us.
Well, they flew up to Darwin on Monday, which was interesting because they got flogged there last year. 7 out of 7, the Gold Coast up there. It's really tough to play in those conditions at night. I reckon Hawthorn, we're going to find out exactly where Hawthorn's at. Feel like they're just off the top echelon, and then but ahead of the pack, chasing pack. That's where I feel like they're at. But Gold Coast in Darwin, Brisbane at the G, Collingwood at the G, Western Bulldogs at Marvel. That's a pretty tough fortnight.
Yeah, you'll well and truly know how your team's
really
going
tough
at that
4
point.
weeks. Do you enjoy the draw? North Melbourne, Brisbane.
I do. I love drawn
So
games.
no extra time
I don't
in
want
home
extra
and away.
time.
I don't
No.
either.
Go back and watch the last 90 seconds of that game. Comben takes a couple of marks. Then once he goes down the line, but not really down the line. It was more to the actual centre wing rather than towards the boundary line. He then went across the ground and took a risk to try to win the game. If there's extra time in that game, Comben holds onto the footy, chips backwards. They just hold on to the possession and say, we're not going to lose. We're going to get through to extra time and then have a crack. I think what we need is for the draw to be the genuine finished result so that both teams spend that 90 seconds trying to win, knowing that's their last chance, as opposed to going, let's give ourselves the full 6 minutes afterwards to win later on rather than potentially lose now. I think that's what makes the draw game so good. Both teams are desperate in that last minute of the game to win the thing rather than just looking to the future.
Great game from Cherry too in that. What do you make of GWS 5 in a row at GMHBA? Do they just match up against Geelong?
I think they match up against Geelong, but I think Jimmy Bartell spoke the other day on TV and he's been involved with GWS obviously about how to win at GMHBA, and I think he's given them some secrets about where to kick the ball, when to run the ball, and how to defend at the ground because it's such a unique ground. And his insights, I thought about, you have to kick the ball from in front of the logo. You can't be slightly behind the logo or it lands in the wrong spot. You have to use the corridor more than what you do at other grounds. All these little tricks here and there. It can't be a coincidence that his time on the board has coincided with them being able to win down there. So I think, an ability to know a ground and how to play there and teach the players how to play there is just so important.
I think a lot of it comes down to Kolodasny, Henry and Stewart out of that defence. I think they're a really good defence, Geelong, but they're big outs.
They're vulnerable now. Yeah, absolutely. Those leaders and their ability to understand what's going on are just so crucial.
They are indeed. Cod, favourite time of the week, the Thirsty Camel mailbag. We'll be giving away a $50 digital voucher. Thank you to Thirsty Camel. This week's special Wild Turkey 81 bourbon 1 litre, only $69.99 a bottle. Get your questions into TheWestSport at wanews.com.au. Please include your mobile number at the bottom of your email as we will send you a digital voucher if you are a weekly winner. This one from Craig. G'day, boys.
I'm Craig.
Yes.
Not mine, though.
This is another Craig.
Oh, good name, Craig. No one gets called Craig anymore.
Yeah, it's a good name. It's a good, solid, wholesome name.
Never call your kid Craig now. It's
Why?
2025. Call them Chad or something like that.
Okay. G'day, boys. Just not Jet or,
Yeah, Ace. I wanted to call my kid Kenobi, and my wife said no. But we're getting off subject. Go back to Craig.
You did not.
I was going to call him Kenobi J. O'Donoghue. I thought it was a great name because then he's got a nickname Nobes, which would have been great. But if he had been a nobody, he could have been called Ken. If he had been an immensely talented, he would have been Kenobi J. Imagine that if he takes the mark of the year. Anyway, go back to this.
Okay. Again, boys, despite all your changes, and you haven't got Barra to pick on all the time, just sometimes, still a great show. My question is, whatever happened to the Eagles' ability to get absolute gems from way down the draft order? Like they used to. Examples, Kemp, Heady, McIntosh, Braun, Embley, Cox. I'm sure you could list a couple of others. Did we have better recruiters back then, or didn't the other clubs do their research on the WA boys back then? Curious, as there's a lot of chatter about Eagles getting top-end draft picks. Craig, a desperate Eagles supporter, waiting for a Darwin-based AFL side because I live there. So he's Craig, our Darwin-based Eagles supporter.
Yeah, so if you look back to Kemp specifically, and I think Heady was part of this group as well, that the draft rules were different and each other club was only allowed to pick one West Australian, so they went for players who were ready right now. And once that had happened, West Coast could just go and pick whoever they wanted from the rest of the state, and they went and got the players of the future. So it was a different thought process back then. It was draft for the now, while West Coast were drafting for the future. So once everyone had a West Australian, they couldn't get access to Heady or Kemp at pick 30, 40, 50. So West Coast could just go and pick them late in the draft. So there would have been earlier picks probably, maybe not Kemp. I think West
Cox
Coast
was a rookie.
Cox was a rookie, yeah. But the Kemp one was, I think they identified him really, really well at the time, my memory is. But they could have picked him at 60 or 70 or 80 or 90 themselves if they wanted to. No one else could have got him at that point. Cox was a really strong example of not knowing enough about the state. And there are a lot of guys, Aaron Sandlands at Fremantle is another example of that, who got through the system because clubs didn't identify a lot of the West Australian country guys all that well. But it's a correct call that West Coast's strength over the years has been their ability to identify the guys late and really nail their first-round picks. And we haven't seen them getting those sorts of players recently where you go, oh, that's an amazing pick at pick 70. Jake Waterman aside, who was a father-son pick back then. But some of the other names you mentioned there, McIntosh was a father-son pick as well. When he came through, his dad played enough games in the Waffle to qualify father-son, which meant they got priority access to him.
Braun and Embley were the others.
Yeah, and Embley became a great player and Braun became a great player as well. But you need to nail those picks late. And if you don't, then it becomes hard work because you don't always get those first-round picks. And that's the difference between being successful and not is your ability to nail those selections.
And obviously recruiting networks are much greater these days. So you really can't fall through the cracks too often, can you, anymore? So.
No, and you do see, I think a lot of clubs take a punt on someone at pick 50 and go, I can see a little bit, rather than being a bit safer and going, we know what that person has definitely done, so let's go with that. Or looking at their athletic attributes can be a good way of getting someone. But if you're getting a slim kid at 56 and going, he might put some weight on, he might do this, might do that, I think you need to have a bit more knowledge of definitely what you're seeing from an athletic point of view and from a football point of view, because that's your best chance of getting a diamond in the rough.
Shows you what a great job Gold Coast did with Will Powell.
Yeah, that's an example.
He was really thin, really lean.
Yeah, they got that one right.
Early too.
Yeah, they got that one right, but most of them tend to get those sorts of ones wrong, it feels like.
Hey guys, short and snappy statement more than a question. There's been discourse around the last few weeks about the value of experienced heads, i.e. Danger at Geelong and Pendle's side bottom at the Pies. Wouldn't that be nice? Meanwhile, in the West, who knows when we will see Yo, Fife, Walters or a fit Allen again, if ever, for some of those guys. Is that travel or poor management? Can you think of any examples in other states?
Well, both clubs have missed their experience. Like Elliot Yo's been missed badly by West Coast as a big body who can certainly settle Harley Reid down at different points. They had a great relationship last year on the field, which helped Harley to become a better player, and it meant that Yo's skill meant he got targeted some games, Harley got targeted some games. Now it's just all on Harley. And I think Fremantle have badly missed Fife and Walters with their experience and leadership out there. Walters never shuts up on a footy field and gives that leadership inside 50, regardless of whether he's getting the ball or not. And Fife's big body was allowing him to block for Brayshaw and for Sarong and Young, which meant that they got the ball out into space a little bit more. He was sacrificing his game a lot. So you see the importance of those guys when they're not there, and it's not just about having the ball in their hands. It's about what they say, where they point people to go, and how they set the team up. And I think if they were available, both teams would have been in better situations late in games this year.
Two things. This one's from Jermaine. Two things. Remember Luke Shuey getting caught with the ball, taking everyone on as a kid, including a semi-final against Collingwood. He learnt and became better. Gross will as well. Takes guts to want to have that responsibility to kick the goal. Second, has there ever been any stats on the new TV setup with Foxtel having the lockdown on Saturday? Has it seen viewers down on radio, TV, etc.? Well, I love having footy on Thursday and Friday. Not having any on free to air for average Joe on Saturday and limited on Sunday could see less kids exposed to the game. I feel cricket has struggled with a lot, being stuck behind a paywall. Will it also happen with AFL? It's just, I mean, this is a sign of the times. I think NRL's had Foxtel Saturdays for some time now. It's not ideal.
It's terrible.
Yeah, on a Saturday.
Let's call it for what it is. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's a bad deal for the viewers at home. It's great for the players because they get more money in their pockets. But if you don't have Foxtel, if you don't have KO, if you don't have the money to pay for it, having a Saturday with no football that you can watch would be so frustrating because that's the traditional football day, especially for older people. My dad is always saying to me, why is there no footy on the TV? On a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday night. So I think that's something which I understand the frustration of people out there. And we mentioned the showdown is a classic example. When you can't watch those games, it would make it feel unfair to you. And if you're from a low-profile team, that if you barrack for one of them, you might not see your team for 6-7 weeks on TV because they'll be put into one of the slots where it's not on free-to-air.
I'm not sure if the AFL foresaw this. At Talkback Radio, there's a hell of a lot of people out there who are really angry about it, but not being able to watch free-to-air on a Saturday.
Yeah, because if you're in the industry, you've got KO and Foxtel because you need to have it and you can claim it on tax if necessary and stuff like that. You just have to, because you have to be able to watch the games. But I agree with the comment about the cricket. Like, it always feels to me like when the cricket is only on pay TV, and when it was moved away from Foxtel onto some of the other streaming networks, you just didn't watch them because you didn't have them. And then it was like, what happened overnight? I don't really know. I'll just move on to the next sport. And I think soccer has suffered from it as well.
Oh, yeah, onto Optus, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
So I think that you've got to be very, very wary about moving your sport behind a paywall when a lot of people simply refuse to pay the money or don't have the option to pay the money. So it's a great call. The mention about Luke Shuey as a kid. I umpired Luke Shuey as a 10-year-old.
Did you?
10-year-old kid. I remember. I said to him when he retired, I said, I umpired you as a 10-year-old. And he goes, when? How do you remember that? I said, because at the end of the game, I remember that you had a good game, and one of the players.
Who was he playing for?
He was playing for Bulleen Templestowe in Victoria.
I played against
At the
Bulleen
Jarney Reserve out there in Templestowe. And the team manager came in with the paperwork, and I sort of said, that kid will be good. And he went, yeah, he'll make it. He said, he's one of the kids who you just know will make it. So it was my final year living in Victoria. I was asked if I could fill in as a senior bloke and come and umpire an under-10s game because I didn't have anyone to do the game. And he was running around out there. And you remember little names like that. Remember umpiring Trent Crode as a 10-year-old as well at one point. But yeah, Luke Shuey, 10 years old, someone said to me, he will make it.
I remember playing at Bulleen Templestowe's home ground, 4 Park Orchards against them, and all I remember is mud. But then again, all the grounds were just mud in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne.
Yes, I was a Beverly Hills boy out at Zerby's Reserve, and it was always mud.
Played a game at Beverly Hills, and there was not one single blade of grass. And I'm not joking. I'm not exact. Paul Roos was from there.
Paul Roos, Adam Kingsley. I played Adam Kingsley's team. He was a jet.
Yeah, not one blade of grass. Not one. So just remember that. Times have certainly changed. Hi, guys. Lately, the pod hasn't arrived early enough on a Thursday. We need a tip for Thursday night footy, and I'd like to hear your latest views. I can look at the West tips, but Quarters, you say you do those earlier in the week. Last year, the pod was earlier. I would listen on my way home from school. Please post earlier. Okay, thank you. That's from Diane. We will, of course, last week. We held it over till the Friday because we wanted to get the Fremantle-Collingwood game in. So bear with us. We will do our very best.
And there's another reason why sometimes they're a bit later, and that's because the West travels with footy teams. We're unlike some of the commentary teams and a lot of the newspapers around the country, we are travelling with West Coast and Fremantle, not on the same plane as them, but we follow them all around the country to make sure we give you the best coverage. And sometimes we have to delay the recording of the podcast because we are either driving to the airport or sitting on the damn plane and waiting to get off all around the country. So whilst we understand the frustration sometimes of the delay in the upload, you are getting better coverage as a result because we are in the state where your team is playing.
Yes, we are busy little beavers. We do like being in this studio doing this or out on location or whatever, but sometimes we're just busy, aren't we, Cod?
Yes, so I'll be flying to Sydney this week to cover the GWS game. So as we said, we'll always have someone on the ground in the state where your team plays.
You have been listening to the West Sports Show. We've been brought to you by TabTouch. Got the touch? Download the TabTouch app today. What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Remember, you can watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube Music. Leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to follow this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Cod, thank you again.
Thanks, Quarters. Always a pleasure.
Look forward to talking to you next Tuesday as we wrap up round 10.